think my eyes are going, man. That's not good. You want to go? Let's go speaker view for now and see.
Oh, there we go.
What happens here? Gallery. We'll do the intro. All right. Ready?
Yep.
We got everything rolling here. Oh, good fucking call. That was almost real bad. Almost real bad.
You're about to get
All right,
NJP'd.
we're good. What's that?
You're about to get NJP'd. We're going to send it
about
right up.
We were about to have no audio. It would have looked cool, but sounded like dog shit. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Two Marines, One Mic. As always, I'm Phil.
And this is Wade.
And this is Angelo.
And we're your hosts. What? Bam, bam.
Bow.
Oh, you finished it up?
What?
I was doing a quick version of it.
Yet.
There, okay. Angela, you gonna chime in or no?
No.
Kill?
I can't.
Cool. Wade, purpose of the podcast so that we can introduce
The purpose
our
of the
guest.
podcast is to give our listeners information, skills, and tools that we learned in the Marine Corps.
And beyond.
Buzz Lightyear.
If you apply to the civilian world, you can ultimately improve the quality of your life.
I like how we just all kind of picked up and went with it there.
Right? You just got to go with it.
Yeah. Our guest today, Lt.Col Stuart Scheller. Welcome. I'm pretty sure most of our listeners are probably familiar. If they're not, they're going to be after the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Phil.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. We did. I mean, obviously, we watched the Jocko podcast for sure. We've all been following since the first video came out. Like before it even went viral, somebody sent it to me. I think it was you, Angela. Somebody sent it like before it went super crazy, before it was on the news and stuff like that. And I was like, oh shit, this is really cool, because you never see that. So like the first thing I did was text my old company commander, he's still Lieutenant Colonel. And I was like, hey sir, do you know this guy? And he's like, not personally, but I have a lot of friends that know him, squared away, good to go. I was like, fuck yeah. Like that makes it even better when like a good infantry officer is like sticking up for the right shit, because unfortunately I don't want to say it's rare, but for the right reasons, sometimes it's not always the norm. So when you can get, a bunch of old infantry enlisted guys like lower, corporal, sergeant, staff sergeant are like, fuck yeah, this is like really cool shit. Like I love what he's talking about, because the accountability piece that you're talking about this whole time is what we do on a regular basis. Like that's, I think, where it starts is through the small unit leadership and the lower enlisted. Wade, you want to roll it and start it?
Let's roll with, we'd like to start with like a little origin story, a little backstory about, where you grew up, what family is like, and then most important question is, why did you choose the Marine Corps over all the other branches of service?
Yeah, appreciate that, Wade. I was trying to take you seriously, Phil, and then Angelo turned in his small red, white, and blue shorts, and it was really hard to hear what you were saying after that.
Because his pants were, would you say they were loud AF or?
I think I don't even know if they're shorts. It almost looks like a bikini bottoms.
No, they're shorts. They're just
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
All right. Okay.
Well, we've just transferred to audio only version of this podcast. Which
All
is,
right.
I mean, yeah, this is have fun. We're having a blast.
So the question, where did I come from? Why did I join the Marine Corps? I moved around the Midwest a lot as a kid. Ended in Cincinnati, Ohio, went to high school, college there. And I never, when I was in high school, thought I was going to go in the Marine Corps. 9/11 happened while I was in college. And even after 9/11, which was the motivation for a lot of my generation to enter the Marine Corps, it still wasn't like the catalyst for me. I knew my life was going to change. I didn't know how, but I was just told my whole life that I had to go to college and finish college. I finished college, and didn't really know what I wanted to do. I majored in accounting and started working as an accountant. And that was 2004. I watched the Marines, moving through the city of Fallujah. And I had a high school coach that was a Marine officer, and he used to talk about the Marines a lot. And somewhere in my head, I thought the Marines were the best. I wanted to deploy and have the chance to experience combat. So I went and talked to the Marine recruiter.
So, Angela, you were in Fallujah, what, 03, 04?
Yeah, I was actually in 1-8 when you were there, because you were Bravo when you first got in, right?
That's right. Yeah, I was Bravo first platoon, I believe.
Yeah, so we got back. Were you with, because I know you mentioned that you and a few of the other guys got pulled out just slightly early out of
that's right.
Lieutenant Weatherington.
Yep.
God, who else?
Were you Charlie Company?
No, it was Alpha.
Okay.
So Alpha 1-8 for Fallujah was Lieutenant Hunt, who became one of the XOs for what company, and then we had Lieutenant.
You went on to be a battalion commander.
Yeah.
Actually, he was out when I was a regimental OPSO out at ITX. So when I was a 6th Marines OPSO, Hunt was out there as one of the package leads. I hadn't seen him since we were in 1A together, and then he got selected to be a battalion commander. So he's still hooking and jabbing.
Yeah, he's a super awesome. He's solid, super solid.
100%.
He had his hand crushed from the hatch of an AAV, and like his nails like came off. Like that's how hard.
Everybody's telling that story.
Yeah, bleeding out, calling airstrikes on top of the rooftop.
I think that everybody that spent any considerable amount of time in the back of an AAV has been injured by that machine somewhere or another.
Yeah.
Right? Like the Halon system almost killed me in the beach in Indonesia in 2009.
He's a super solid guy. But a lot of the Bravo guys have been reaching out to me, and they just, they love you and they all support you. JP, all these guys from TBS and all that, they just wanted to, send their support too. So just wanted
It's awesome. Yeah. 1-8 was very influential to me. Man, I joined because I watched you, Angelo, and 1-8 on the TV, and just happened to, by happenstance, show up to 1-8, bunch of warriors, did a MEU where I was an AV platoon commander for that MEU. I could tell you a million stories about tracks and Marines throwing up in them and blah, blah, blah. But then we did that MEU, and then we did Ramadi. And so that was very influential time for me. And yeah, a bunch of good dudes there.
Yeah. Ramadi you were East Coast your entire career.
I was, yeah. I mean, my career ping ponged between Lejeune and Quantico. So I did 2 tours up in Quantico, but I've never been stationed anywhere other than Lejeune or Quantico.
So you were Ramadi in 06, 07?
So my first deployment was in MEU, and that was in like the second half of 06. And that was a NEO to Lebanon.
Okay.
And then when we got back, like right at the end of 06, going into 07, we ended up pumping back out to Ramadi September to like April 08. So September 07 to April 08 was Ramadi.
Okay. So I think my unit was there. It was right before I got there. It was deployed before I got there. They were 2-4 was over there. And then 2-4 was over there in 04, which was not fun for them.
Yeah.
I mean,
04 to 06 anywhere in Iraq was heavy fight.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
You went to Alpha to be the XO too, right?
Yeah. So actually, I haven't even got into this because it's a lot, but yeah. So I did the MEU as a platoon commander, and how as an officer, you want to go to like weapons company or be an XO. And all I wanted to do was be a platoon commander in Iraq. And I was like heartbroken when we came back on the MEU and we didn't get into Iraq, and I knew we were going to Ramadi again. And so I asked if I could be the weapons platoon commander in Bravo Company, because I anticipated that they were going to go to the 4 platoon model, which they ended up doing. So I was like, I could game the game, be the senior platoon commander, be a platoon commander, and get my Ramadi deployment. So that's what I asked. And were you there when Eric Clark showed up, the Bravo Company commander? It doesn't matter. So the Bravo Company commander shows up, and I'm sitting there, and he comes to me one day and he's like, hey, because it was Weatherington was the Alpha Company XO, and I don't know the whole full story, but Salo was a real tough guy to work for, and he didn't care for Weatherington. And they're like, you are either going to be the Alpha XO or you are going to leave and go be a platoon commander on an IA billet. Like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I chose this billet because I wanted to be a platoon commander. So I was like, I'll leave 1-8 and go be a platoon commander in IA billet. And he's like, all right. And then he pulled me in his office at the end of the day. He's like, you're the XO for Alpha Company. And I was like, why the fuck did you ask me the question? No. And so then they moved me over, maybe the XO, and that was that.
Isn't IA like not like such a great billet for an officer?
It's yes, it's a place where you can hide people.
Right.
So
Okay.
you get studs, you get people that seek out those billets. So it's not necessarily a guy that's not that good, but yeah, if you have a company commander or a platoon commander that you maybe want to push out of the way without relieving, that's an option. So you kind of get a mixed bag.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's go backwards, because I think the entire message and the whole point of what we want to get across is like your career and how it pertains to the message that you're bringing to everybody today, which is, you know, accountability, like on all fronts. Was there a certain point, like let's say as like a junior officer, lieutenant captain, where you were like, something's fucked up, like there's something fucked up from up here and I don't know how to fix it? Is this a problem that you've been trying to solve for, you know, a decade?
Yeah, I was not prior enlisted. I was a little bit lost as a young lieutenant. And I really didn't hit my groove until I was probably a company commander. Once I was a company commander, I mean, I felt like I could outdo all my peers at that point. Like maybe that's true, maybe that's not, but I was very confident and I knew my shit. As a lieutenant, I was playing catch up. I felt like a lot.
I feel like most are,
yeah,
like,
most,
with all due respect,
yeah.
like most new lieutenants are lost.
Because you come in, you learn from you know, TBS, OIC, and things change so quickly. So it's not like it's.
So I guess the point I'm making on that is when I went to Ramadi, I saw a lot of things that I just didn't understand what we were doing, and I questioned. But it's almost like I chalked it up to I must just not know.
Right.
I must just not have enough experience, because all these guys that have been doing it for so long have a different perspective. And so it was really hard to be vocal back then, because it was almost like I assumed I just didn't know the right answers, if that makes sense.
Maybe it's just like maybe this is something that I just haven't thought through. Maybe it's out of my pay grade still, and somebody that's been here longer than me, more experience, has kind of made the determination that this is a good thing to do.
That's right. And so, I mean, I could go into a bunch of examples in Ramadi, just the amount of PPE that we wore, and that was like seemed to be the most important things, the way we did missions, the way we handed out money. I mean, I could just go on and on. We did census patrols every day, and I talked to a unit that had been there like 2 years ago. We were like, we did the exact same thing. Like, what happened to all the information? This was like every unit just had this like loss of memory, and we just like replayed the same movie over and over. And so I left Iraq with a lot of questions, went to the School of Infantry, saw how we train students. Really, that was more of like a leadership PME, just dealing with my instructors and my students.
What year were you at SOI the first time?
I was there from 8 to 10, and ITB, because of that was when Marines were getting like $60,000, $70,000 re-enlistment bonuses, because they were trying to grow the force.
I was at SOI in the end of 2008. That's why I'm at in North Carolina.
Oh, no shit? Yeah, I showed up in August 2008 as the weapons instructor group OIC. I was still a first lieutenant.
Okay.
And then in December 2008, they made me the Echo Company commander. And so then I was the Echo Company commander for the next like year and a half.
Yeah, that's great. I was there. I was Delta Company. I think I graduated in early December. Yeah, because when I got to the fleet, it was like Christmas Eve. So I was Delta Company there, ran my first PFT in the fucking snow.
I was one of those Marines that re-enlisted and got that big ass bonus.
And then you spent it all on strippers.
Well, not all of it. Not all of it.
Yeah.
Bad
Yeah,
decision making.
I would say most of my instructors spent it on a new truck. I still had my college Hyundai Sonata. And when I parked in my parking lot, it was like new truck, new truck, new truck, new truck.
I've
Hyundai
never seen so
Sonata,
many pickup
new
trucks in my
truck, new
life.
truck, new truck. Felt like an idiot.
I remember there was this sergeant. I forget his name. I only remember one of my instructors' names from SOI, but this other guy, fuck, I feel like his name was Osborne. I don't know why, but he had this GMC. I'll never forget. And like you did this like 2 years after this guy had this, and you're getting like fucking ninja punched. He had, remember like everybody had the window stickers on the back of the car of like the dude like pissing on something.
Oh yeah.
And it was like a dude pissing on Iraq, like huge on the back of this giant truck. And I just remember him watching him get in it like every day. And years later, I'm like, how the fuck how does he get away with that? Like, who has not said anything to this guy about this before? And I'm like, how, like super low reg, gunny rolls, like probably brand new sergeant, but salt dog, right? At least in my eyes as a private first class. But I'm like, imagine doing that in like 2011, 12, 13.
It wouldn't fly.
Where like
It wouldn't fly.
not even close. Not even
No.
close. You can't whisper like sweet nothings in like a boot's ear without getting like a hazing charge at that time.
No, hazing started getting, they started cracking down on hazing. I mean, even before I got to 1.8 in 2003, but when 2003 happened, like hazing was like, hey, don't go around fucking doing it. They're naming off all this stuff, like shoving broomsticks up fucking boots' ass.
Oh, dude, that story was still going around.
Cheetos, throwing them off third deck, throwing them off second deck, trying to waterboard them, like all this weird stuff. I'm like, why would they do that?
Oh,
doesn't make sense. How does that make us better leaders?
And then you get boots.
And then you get boots, and you're like,
but like I was hazed, dude,
smack
but
'em.
not to like and my seniors weren't. Most of my direct generation before me didn't go to combat, but like my squad leaders and up were all Ramadi guys.
see, so my senior Marines had went to Iraq. They went to Mosul before we went to Fallujah, but they didn't do anything. But they would tell us that they did all this high speed stuff. So when we actually got into real firefights, you can tell who was like that, like actually fucking all about it, and who was fucking lying.
But what I'm saying is, like, I mean, I had like Lance Corporals crawling through my window at like 3 a.m., which was probably pointless. But at the end of the day, I feel like it definitely helped shape the Marine that I was later on. And I have Marines that I got, like my boots, that say the same thing. They were like, they hated their life when they first got to the fleet. But after we got home from Afghanistan, they're like, man, like this was like actually beneficial to like me being aware of shit, like when we were over there. So,
And that was also like the
helps out.
first time I saw accountability. That's the first time I started really seeing like people being, hey, you're gonna fucking pay for that. Like that's not fucking.
that's
unsat.
that's unsat.
Yeah.
But that's like I was talking about at the beginning of the show. Like that's where it starts for us,
Yeah.
right? It's the little shit, fucking boot camp, brush your teeth, fucking one tooth at a time, right?
Yeah.
Like the dumb shit. Hey, who told you to go to the left side of your face? But it's different when you get to a point where, and all of that's in an effort to. It sounds stupid, but it's fucking true, like 100% true, to stop Marines from dying on the battlefield, right? It all comes down to that attention to detail, being accountable, showing, hey, I fucked up. Cool. Let's move forward, right? Let's move forward. Let's fix it and move forward. Wade?
I think there's a lot of instances, just like you're saying, that they're minute, right? It's like tie your shoes a certain way, and there's like certain shit. Like, I mean, I dealt with like lieutenants and second lieutenants that I had, those instances where it's like, well, why are we doing this, sir? Because I fucking said so, Sergeant Waddick. I'm like, Roger that. Makes no goddamn sense, but here we go. We're going to do it your way, sir. And those things are frustrating to NCOs and to even, your PFCs and Lance Corporals. And obviously, the same sentiment shared by you. But as you go through your career, like, you started a family, and so risking stepping out and saying something, the risk gets bigger and bigger, right? If you're on your first contract and you're a corporal, sometimes like, you know what, sir, go fuck yourself. You're gonna get an NJP and you can still go fuck yourself. But you're, when you're a lieutenant colonel, there's a lot to lose there. So the frustration must have been building up somewhere. And was the 13 that were killed over there, was that like that just pushed you over the edge when that happened and said, you know what, I've had enough? Because at that point when you upload this video, whether it goes viral or not, like there's going to be blowback and repercussions. And maybe you don't really know the magnitude, but you just said, fuck it, I don't care. Like someone's got to say something because people need to be held accountable.
Yeah, Wade, absolutely. The attack at Kabul that took 13 lives from 1-8, the unit we've been talking about, was something that propelled me to action, but it had been building for a while. I'm going to just randomly talk for a minute. So we're talking about, things that bother us. When I first came in, we were talking about Iraq, and I got the 1-8, a unit full of warriors. As a young guy, I felt very much it was like, you don't know shit because you haven't been to Iraq. And even as a lieutenant, like that was projected upon me. I was like, okay. So we get to Iraq, do Iraq, and then I'm at SOI, having done Iraq, and the Marine Corps is pivoting to Afghanistan. And then it was like, well, you don't know shit because you haven't been to Afghanistan. I was like, okay. So I went to Afghanistan, did my Afghanistan thing. And then I came back from Afghanistan. I go on and I'm a company commander. And then when I'm a company commander, like, well, you don't know shit because you haven't been doing unit training. You've only done PTP. You weren't around pre 9/11, so you don't know shit. And that's the moment where I was like, it doesn't matter what I do. There's always someone that makes it generational that wants to say, you don't know shit. And it really started eating at me. And specifically the whole reawakening thing with General Amos just really fundamentally bothered me, because I watched some of the sacrifices of our people on the battlefield at a much more intimate level than I'm sure General Amos ever did. And for him to say that we were going to start putting like cameras in the barracks and the NCOs needed to like rise to the occasion, when I'm again thinking through all these like fundamental operational and strategic problems, and I'm looking at the generals and I'm just thinking, I'm not sure you guys get it. And my battalion commander at the time was like going on a rampage, like when we were talking about the reawakening, is like, this is the direction we're going, and if you don't agree with it, you can just get out. And to your point, Wade, it's like, well, it's not that fucking easy, is it? Like, I've got a family, I've got like things in my life. It's not, do I agree with this? No, I'm just going to get out. Like, I've invested a lot of my life. Maybe it's a little bit more complicated than I just disagree with it, so I should fucking get out. And so then when I went to command and staff after my company command tour, I focused my master's on foreign diplomacy, because that was the frustration that I was having. Wrote, thought, read about it, and kind of put that on the back burner. I went to MARSOC, really enjoyed MARSOC, went and was a regimental OPSO. But then as I was in the battalion commander seat and I started watching the Afghan withdrawal unfold, I mean, there's no better example in history of just a terrible plan through and through. We decided to withdraw the troops from April to September, which is literally the peak fighting season for anyone that's ever been to Afghanistan. Yep. You could have done the withdrawal from October to February and been almost unmolested by the Taliban. So like, was anyone even thinking about that? The Bagram Air Base thing blows my mind. The most important piece of key terrain that we just decided to leave. We wildly underestimate the Taliban. The Taliban walk into Bagram uncontested, release prisoners that we had left in there, pick up our weapons, then go right outside the civilian airfield that we have, get into firefights with our Marines. Like, it's not even public knowledge yet. Like, I know that we were in like multiple days firefights where the Taliban had pinned the civilians in between the Marines and themselves. We get into like multiple day firefights with them. And then we say, okay, now you're going to hold our security. Like, in what universe does that happen? Then obviously they let a suicide vest attack in. And then after that, we do a drone strike and kill nothing but civilians and children. And then we leave thousands of Americans and like billions of dollars in gear. Like, if that's not enough to get a general fired, I mean, I can't think of another scenario that's worse than that. And so,
it doesn't-
yeah, when the 13
exist.
when the 13 service members got killed, I was just like, and I knew no one was going to be held accountable. And so, I didn't go into that day thinking I was going to make a video. But when I found out they were killed, I just got on my computer and started writing all my frustrations. And then once I wrote it, I'm reading it. I'm like, somebody needs to say this. And then I was like, well, maybe I'll make a video. And so I made a video. But even then I was like, because I understood the impact of it. I was like, I don't know if I want to be the guy. But when I drove home, it was on my phone. I came to the conclusion that somebody had to have the courage to do it.
But you know what, sir? At the end of the day, you were the person I think that had to do it, right? It had to come from somebody that's still wearing the uniform, because we can all, having been there, got the T-shirt, whatever. We could talk about it. We can rant and rave. We can get on the fucking news and talk about that shit. I got on the news and talked about that shit, but nobody hears it from us. It sounds, and people get to hear it when your fucking chest says United States Marine, and you have your rank on your collar, right? And people get to see that video. Wow, this is somebody that's still there, that's still doing this, that's still leading Marines, that's still involved, and somebody that cares about this organization and its members so much that they're going to risk everything and step out of line and say what needs to be said and what needs to be heard by everybody at this point, right? That's not a situation that needs to be kept in house anymore, because that's how they got there in the first place, right? Everything's been kept in house and kind of swept around.
Yeah, and no one's been held accountable.
Yeah.
Still, to this day, no one's been held accountable.
Well,
no one talks about it. No one, and it's crazy to think that you would that something like Afghanistan and the withdrawal would be so unorganized. Like you said, the time frame, like not being molested by fucking Taliban.
Yeah, dude, when it's fucking snowing. Easy.
What happened to fucking BAMSIS? What happened to all those damn acronyms that you?
6 true bleeding subs.
What happened to all that? Like, does the basics of Marine Corps infantry just go out the window?
MPCOA, right? What's the enemy's most
I
probable
don't get it.
I don't know. Blow us up,
right? All that goes out the window, and no one's still being held accountable. No one is.
Well, here's the thing, and sir, please correct me if I'm wrong, but in the squad level, let's say Lance Corporal Schmuckatelli, gets into a fight out in town, right? Nothing happens. He comes in with a black eye, team leader finds out, squad leader finds out, squad leader's like, all right, guys, listen what we're going to do. We were all doing, grappling together as a squad level training, Friday afternoon before we got cut loose. Somebody got elbowed in the eye, right? You keep it in house, right? You want to protect your own. I feel like is that something that happens at the officer level as well, and especially at the general officer level, where everybody's just trying to, protect each other for the most part, except it just costs more.
Yeah, I mean, the last 20 years of war, Afghan withdrawal is like the perfect exclamation on the failures of the last 2 decades. But the combatant commanders, CENTCOM combatant commanders, never been fired. And how many mistakes have we made just in terms of everything? And so, yes, obviously there's evidence to your point that they keep mistakes in house. Other than, I can't even think of a 4-star general that's been fired over the last 20 years, except for McChrystal. And it wasn't because of failure as a warfighter. It was because his staff talked bad about President Obama. And so I can't even think of someone where we looked at a general and said, hey, this was not a good plan. You did not pull this off well. You did not advise when we were talking about disbanding the Sunnis from the government. That was probably a bad idea. We could just keep going through this, right? And so yes, there's obviously some protect each other at the top ranks.
So you posted the video, and I know you talked about how you posted it and then it just kind of started catching fire, and how there was a little back and forth with your wife, and when that happened, like after it took off, what was the response from your colleagues? Not from the higher ups, but from your colleagues and below. Because I feel like, the higher ups are always going to be like, oh, this motherfucker is
Yeah. Were you getting texts from like sergeants and staff sergeants and like,
Yeah.
Hey, we
Yeah.
got you, sir? Or was it like,
because I got a bunch of texts from 1-8 guys. They were like, oh, do you remember Lieutenant Scheller? And I was like, oh man, the name sounds familiar. I also realized you requested me on Facebook a few months prior to that, and I declined it, not knowing who you were. So I want to apologize for that
Fucked
too.
up, Angelo.
yeah, now he's like, fuck you, dude, I'm famous.
So, but like, were you getting those messages from the
Yeah, I
local
was.
guys?
Yeah, I mean, across the board. In fact, there was a guy in 1-8. I'll just say his name. Pat Canale. He's now Gunny. Awesome guy. That there's a guy that I'm still in touch with, that I've served with since 1-8. And so, yeah, him times 20 others. So a lot of positive reinforcement, but a lot of positive reinforcement almost came from like the E8 and below. And then
Right.
I was a company commander at TBS, and a lot of those are now very young captains. And so those young captains and below were all very supportive, but kind of major and up and like E9 and up, there wasn't a lot of love. It was just
Probably
kind
wasn't
of,
a lot of talk, period. Right.
that's
It's like,
right.
let me
It was
distance.
calm. It was calm, silent. And then, as this situation escalated, it actually got a little adversarial, we'll say.
Right. And you had on one of your posts some a Marine that you used to work for, actually, that you thought you were friendly with, that was, kind of your mentor, just like randomly like kind of troll you on the internet. He was like,
Yeah, it was your battalion commander when you went through ITB.
no shit.
Yeah.
So,
No way.
this says a lot.
Yeah, that explains it. It was my battalion commander when I went what was his name?
Hobbs, Hobbs.
Oh no. I mean, at that level, you don't really know. Like, I'm
No,
a
you
fucking
don't.
boot.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I don't remember.
PFC is not going to remember the fucking lieutenant colonel that
Yeah,
just
who's
spoke
the
at
battalion
graduation in the intro.
I don't
brief.
even know
Got
if he
it.
did that, right?
But
like, the only officer I remember before I got to the fleet was, his name was Captain Gordon, and the only reason I know that is because he was our JAG / series commander in boot camp, and then he became our JAG officer for our deployment in Afghanistan in 2011. Which is, I just was like, oh, I know you. He's like, okay, cool. I'm a lieutenant colonel now, so fuck you. But okay, so that was the guy. So who's the Delta Company commander in 2008.
no, he was the battalion commander in 2008.
Oh, ITB battalion commander.
Yeah, and he went on to be a full bird colonel. But I got to know him real well because I was a company commander and he was the battalion commander, right?
Right.
So we worked with each other, company commander to battalion commander relationship for 2 years. And he went on to pick up colonel. We stayed in touch. And yeah, he called me out on my social media publicly. Like, he's got my phone number. He's got my email. He could have reached out.
Keyboard warrior.
Right.
He's a
But
keyboard warrior.
He chose to publicly attack me. And so
I feel like,
I mean, I didn't respond to him. I did, I guess, in a way, because in my second video, I referenced what he said.
right.
But outside of that, like, I've never really gone after him. I mean, it's just, that was his position. And to me, I got nothing else to say to you.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think you went about that the right way, right? It's like, okay, I can play that game too. Right. Let's see who gets, more eyeballs at the end of the day. Right. Because that's what you're trying to do when you make a comment like that, is you're, hey, everybody watch me reprimand, this Marine. And then at the end of the day, like, it's okay, watch this, you want to talk about honor, want to talk about accountability. My phone didn't ring. I didn't get a text message. And it's kind of the same thing from what I was listening to that happened when the Marine Corps started to put out press releases about your mental health. we're trying to find Lt.Col Scheller. We can't find him. We can't get in contact. We hope he's okay, right?
Yeah, they said we're trying to ensure that he's not a threat to himself or his family, which is like, what the fuck did you just say? And yeah, I mean, I had talked to my regimental XO that day. I had talked to my friends, and they just, I mean, so the phone records validate that I was on my phone all day, and they never reached out to me. So it was pretty frustrating.
I mean, it comes to, the spotlight is, obviously constantly on the enlisted and below. So when you came out, you just shined a spotlight right.
We do that to ourselves, right?
Well, I mean, yes, the enlisted, we do it ourselves.
Marine gets pulled over with stripper in the trunk.
Yeah,
right? Like
that's understandable.
like
so
their own
when you
Florida
turn
Man
that spotlight right in the eyes of these higher ups that have been hiding in the dark for a while, it's going to get pretty dark. So once you started seeing the responses you were getting from above, what was the atmosphere like with having to sit down with everyone above and going through?
No general ever reached out to me. I mean, they never tried to de-escalate it. And the colonel that was my boss, it got weird real quick. And so there was no engagement. It was just a formal counseling or gag order or reminder that you violated the gag order or you're going to jail. But there was no let's have a discussion about what's going on. It was just formal correspondence.
And they didn't want you to go back on social media. They didn't want you to make any more videos.
Oh, no, absolutely not. After the first video, when they relieved me, they had me sign a piece of paper acknowledging the page 11 that I had signed in, 5 years previous, that said I won't make a social media post that discredits the Marine Corps. And so each time I made a post, I had to re-acknowledge the social media policy, and I just didn't care about the social media policy. It wasn't about the social media policy. It was about the message that I felt strongly about. And so the threats of consequences, similar to what you were saying about your corporal, that was like, fuck you, sir. And he's like, we're going to get JP'd. Well, fuck you still, sir. That was what the Lt.Col Scheller was doing. I want accountability. Well, you're going to get in JP'd. Well, I don't care. I still want accountability, right? And so that's just how it played out.
I think it's making an impact, and maybe you could share with our listeners and us, for that matter, some of the type of messages you've gotten from other people. And it doesn't necessarily mean to be someone on active duty or a veteran. It could just be at a big corporation that's been very unhappy with their upper management or leadership, and seeing what you've done has given them the courage to speak out. Because there's this new viral video of DHS getting a brief from one of their chiefs, and one of the agents is like, yo, what the fuck, what's going on at this border is fucked up. We can't do our job. And they're speaking out. And I watched that video. I was like, I wonder if some of these guys have been inspired by your video. It's like, hey, we're not just gonna, because you're told shut the fuck up and follow orders. But we've all done really stupid shit where we're like, what the fuck are we doing? There's repercussions for this shit. And it's not what I, swore an oath to do. And you're seeing these guys speak out. So have you gotten messages like that have given other people courage to say, hey, this guy, him stepping up and saying something's given me the courage to do the same at my workplace or my command, or et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been asked that. And to your question, absolutely. I've actually been overwhelmed with it. So COVID is obviously a big topic, not just in the military, but the firefighters across the nation have been reaching out to me. I mean, there's been railroad companies that have reached out to me. And to your point about the border, I actually went down to the border last week. I went to Roma, Texas, and saw it for myself. And it's a real problem. And yes, there seems to be a lot of fundamental problems that it's you see leadership trying to get you to look in a different direction. And I think the time now, with the availability of information, and social media's got a lot of problems, but it also provides an unfiltered view too. And I think a lot of people are educated enough to sift through some of the noise and make decisions for themselves. Kind of like, I didn't know anything about the border, and it's hard to even know what's true anymore. So, but because I had heard enough of the rumblings, like I went down there for myself and spoke to a border agent and spoke to the National Guard and spoke to law enforcement. And just in this 30-mile stretch that I saw on the border, the night previous in Roma, Texas, this was just like a week ago, they caught 120, right? And it's like, and if you do the math, there's like, I don't know, 1,900 miles of border. So like, what's 120 proportional to 30 miles to 1,900 miles? I mean,
over the
if
course
you're
of a
thinking of it
month
like that,
or a year.
yeah. So yes, people have reached out to me. Sometimes they want to know like if they should speak out, and I guess the advice that I give all of them is you got to really think through what's important to you, your values, and is it worth it with your family? Like, I don't know if I'd recommend everyone do what I did, because it was very emotionally draining. But I think we are at an inflection point in America. Some of the points we're talking about with just the vaccine, no matter what your stance is on it, the border, no matter what your stance is on it, there seems to be some misinformation and people not really acknowledging the data and the real problems. And I think that's why people are starting to get frustrated and say, this doesn't make sense. Like, you're saying one thing, but doing another thing. That's hypocrisy. We should have some accountability. We should have some transparency. And that's the only way we can grow.
I totally agree with that. And unfortunately, I think that we're in a time in the world where it's very rare that you'll find a human being with an opposing view that would ever say, hey, you know what? You're right. I should probably look into that more. It's like, no, and just shit flies off the handle completely in one direction or another, right? And not to bring politics into this, but it's just divided our country so much, whether you stand on the left, the right, and that's the problem with it, right? Is because there's a left and a right, and there is no more middle ground, where I really believe that 90% of Americans kind of float along this middle highway here, but you're being forced into 16 ideals on the left, 16 ideals on the right. Pick one, or you're dead to me.
I can't tell you. I mean, I agree with you violently on that point. So my website, AuthenticAmericans.com, if you go check it out, you can see my political views, and it's exactly what was just described. I think the central left and central right have more in common than the extreme right and extreme left. And I think the extreme right and extreme left are actually what's polarizing this country. If you want to get like a true test of America, talk to the people that make $50,000 to $150,000 a year. Those people aren't really as active as people just out of college or really poor people, because those people are working their asses off.
Yep.
They also don't have the means as all these people that are making, hundreds of millions of dollars. And so those people that are making 50 to 150 are probably both Republican and Democrat, but they probably don't believe in wealth distribution under progressivism. They probably don't believe in like a lot of QAnon stuff. Like when I posted my stuff and everyone was like trying to paint me as this right-wing extremist, and they were putting all this QAnon stuff on my page, like I didn't even know what that was. I had to like Google like, what is QAnon, right? And so it's like you get these, you get put in a group pictures painted to you in the media of like you're either like one of this or this. And I really believe, like, I'm a conservative. I'm on the right, but every time I hear Tulsi Gabbard, a previous Democratic congresswoman, speak, I'm like, yes, dude, what she just said. And I'm sure if I studied all her views, like, we're not going to agree on everything, but I'm probably going to agree with her.
2024 watch.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. But I think it's too simple of a model, Republican or Democrat. Like, we have to open our brains, look at some of the issues, be able to have healthy dialogue, just like you were talking about, and not let these extreme sides polarize us to the point where we can't even have a healthy discussion.
Well, and that's the thing too. And I know Wade's big on this. He's like, and I think we all are, like, I welcome the discussion, and not to prove anybody wrong or to slam my ideals down somebody's throat, but I want to know what you actually think, right? And there's the, the old saying now, it's like, okay, tell me, give me a solid reason why you voted for Joe Biden without using Trump's name, right? And like there's been nobody that's had that conversation with us, at least, face to face, and we've been, I think, pretty active about trying to find one for a while, like to the point, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
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 And like it's not even about like who you voted for, just like on any of the issues, right? The COVID vaccine, the border, mask mandates, everything that's going on in the world today. It's like there's a hard fucking line right now, and that line is whether you watch CNN or fucking Fox News. Unfortunately,
And it's always an agenda. Right. There's always an agenda behind everything.
Well, yeah.
Always.
So to that point, like left and right, and what you just said, agenda. There's also the narrative, right? So Fox and AON and Newsmax are leaning one direction, and it's narrative based, right? But I think now that we know, like all four of us kind of like ideologically lean more that way. And then you have, on the other side, MSNBC, CNN. But I did notice that at least Fox was willing to put you on TV.
Yeah, great question.
Have you on as a guest. Okay, so did CNN or MSNBC ever once reach out to you to say, hey, we'd like to have you on as a guest so we could not just spew our narrative bullshit and actually, have a conversation with you and let you tell your story versus us tell your story for you?
Yep. So CNN and MSNBC both covered my story with multiple articles. I was on CNN's website, like one of the top 3 stories after my first video went out. And not only did they not reach out to me, but I have a PR agent who engaged their team. So like we reached out to Anderson Cooper's team. We reached out to Bill Maher. We reached out to the teams on MSNBC, and they just are avoiding me. And so, and then it's like you said, you either watch Fox News or CNN. But when you get someone that's like me, that's like, I think accountability is a nonpartisan issue. And I think we should be able to talk and have intelligent conversation. Like, even if we don't agree, if it's your show, you can even drive the conversation. All I ask is that you don't heavily edit to make me look like an idiot, and that you allow me to banter and have intelligent counter responses. And then you air that, and they're just avoiding me. And so then it paints me as like a right-wing guy because I'm only on Fox News and Newsmax because the left won't even engage me. And so that's frustrating in itself.
Right. And then you have even like, I don't know if you know the guys from like Drinking Bros or American Party, like Dakota Meyer and Dan.
I was texting the Drinking Bros guys the other week. So I was down with the Black Rifle Coffee guys last week.
With Jared and Evan and Matt.
Yeah, and they put me in touch with the Drinking Bros guys, but I haven't gotten on their show yet.
They're awesome, man. Dakota's become a friend over the last couple of years, and like just listening to their show, we've had both of them, Dan and Dakota, on our podcast, and just listening to where they stand. Like everybody's like, oh, they're right-wing extremists. I'm like, no, both of them literally, they have a podcast that talks about how the bipartisan system is broken. Like it doesn't work because of this highway where 90% of Americans stand, right? And that's kind of the ideal of their show. So I wasn't sure if you had been in touch with them or if we could try to make a connection there for you, but that's exactly where it is, right? It's right. Hey, you're not a Republican Party. You're not a Democratic Party. You're a fucking American Party, right? Like right in the fucking middle. Like, what are we doing to help ourselves right now instead of fighting each other? Because now we're in a world of shit when it comes to foreign diplomacy, right?
Yeah, what's gonna happen? Ourselves. I mean, we have my fiance's son is at Paris Island right now, and I'm like, this administration's fucking up so many things so bad. It's like what could take everyone's eyeball off of inflation, the border. It's like, oh, we're now gonna go to war with Russia over the Ukrainian border. I'm like, I mean, I feel like that's coming.
It's definitely being discussed. This is a whole separate can of worms that I can get into. Yeah. But just the wave top is NATO is there to address this very thing. That's why we spend so much money on NATO. NATO has a pot of money. NATO has a bunch of countries. So before we even talk about anything, you need to assemble the NATO team and have a discussion there. And so the fact that the United States unilaterally is talking about this without engaging the NATO partners is absurd.
It's all
And NATO
So we're
is
powerful.
not really that great.
Well, it's NATO. I mean, have you ever served with NATO? I haven't. I've served with the NATO countries.
I have a blue medal that says that I did.
Yeah, I got that too. But no, I never served with like the NATO blue hat. I've served with the countries that reside in NATO. And I'll use Poland for an example. Poland is on the border of Ukraine and is an actual NATO member, unlike Ukraine. And so if we were going to send 8,500 troops over there, that's probably a place they would go. Poland, I've served with them in Afghanistan, will only fire in self-defense. So if they're here and I'm getting shot at and I call them and be like, hey, can you shoot the enemy that's shooting at me? They would say no. So like, this is a complicated issue if you're going to get these NATO partners together.
Right.
You know, there's so many things that need to be talked through. And right now we're saying we got to get 8,500 troops together. And it's like, Russia's got like 150 on the board. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, and don't we already have that many people on standby, like as is, like they're kind of making a big deal out of it, but it's like, oh no, that's like a regular thing that we have.
Yeah.
Air
alert.
We have we have units that are ready to deploy. Maybe Marine Expeditionary units. I don't know, 82nd Airborne, stuff like that, right? Stuff that people that are ready to deploy kind of all the time.
So now you've gotten heat
circling back
above.
Circle back.
Kind of walk us through like what was going on after that, because that just seems, from what I've heard from like on Jocko and just some of your messages like on LinkedIn and stuff, it sounds like everything was coming crashing down on you. Like nothing else mattered but the fact that you asked for accountability and they weren't having it.
It was when I made the first video, I never planned on it being anything more than the first video. And we kind of talked about my boss heckling me and they fired me immediately. So I made another video, then they got weirder and it just became this escalating thing that culminated with me in jail and then court-martialed and then having to remain silent for 4 months while they processed my resignation. And so it was very tough because that whole process was like 5 months and I couldn't talk. And there was narratives that were run about me that I just felt like were blatantly true or blatantly false. And I just didn't have the ability to address them. And when I got out, this media thing I've been doing for the last, 6 weeks since really beginning of January. And I'll probably stop here at the end of this month and just focus on the next things. But it's been cathartic being able to just talk through with guys like yourselves that maybe saw the video, but then maybe forgot about it. And then now I've kind of resurfaced in the media. I'm doing the media just for my peace of mind because there was a stories that were run about me that just, pick it. I've been called a fascist. I've been called schizophrenic. I've been called bipolar. I've been called PTSD victim. I've been called a right-wing extremist. I mean, it just, the shit went on. And I'm just like, I'm reading, I'm like sitting at my house on leave with no responsibilities, but still a Marine under a gag order, reading all this shit. And I'm like, it was just a hard time.
That would drive me nuts. And what were the repercussions if you violated the gag order?
I went back to jail.
And you did violate it.
And then once I got out of jail the first time, they had me sign paperwork that said essentially, not only will you go back to jail, but like you're going to get a dishonorable discharge.
So now you're everything's in question there. But you did end up violating it. That was after you got out, right? After you got out of jail, you're on a gag order, or was that?
No, I was in the gag order after my 4th video. I violated it. They sent me to jail. When I got out of jail, I didn't violate it again.
You're like, I don't want to go back to jail.
The brig's
I at that point was ready to move on.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then your court martial process, what was that like? How was the judge, the prosecution?
Yeah, I thought the judge was about as fair as he could be. I don't think he wanted me to plead guilty because he stated that he'd never seen anyone sent to jail for circumstances like mine. And I felt like because he thought that, he thought undue command influence was applied on me because I pled guilty in jail. And so part of his obligation is to go through each charge and make sure that I'm actually guilty. And so it was painful how much detail he went into, but ultimately I decided to plead guilty. And he went on to say that he watched all the videos and they put into more context and appropriate manner than what the prosecution had criminalized. He said I had an outstanding record. He said the people that leaked my medical records and investigation should be the criminals that were brought before the court. And the defense asked for like 30 grand and he only took $5,000, but he did accept my guilty pleas. And so, I mean, what he said and the way he behaved, it was like this guy gets it. Like, why don't you guys get it? So right. I did feel really good about how the judge behaved.
Now, the reason you pleaded guilty, was it like a kind of like a plea bargain where you're?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It was a plea deal where you had to plead guilty or you plead not guilty, but there was no pick and choose of your charges. So it was 5 charges, plead guilty, all 5, and agree to resign, or you go to general court martial and you plead not guilty to all of them. And that was the decision I had to make. Was your
the classification of your discharge set if in the plea?
Made a 4, so they said it's either honorable or general under honorable, and we'll decide that later. They decided the lower of the 2. In fact, that's the same thing they're doing with COVID right now. They're saying your discharge, if you refuse the vaccination, will be honorable or general under honorable.
And then giving people
general under honorables instead of honorables. And so I don't understand why they do that. Why don't they just tell you? So, I mean, history demonstrates if they give you like 2 options, they're going to go with the lower one. Because I really believed that I would get an honorable. That was like one of the things I was surprised there by at the end, because the orders clearly state if your service is so honorable up to the incident that you should receive an honorable, but they still stuck it to me all the way out the door.
But post service, you could always fight that.
You could go back and have that.
You can appeal it. I'm not going to appeal it right now while all the same people are still in the positions that already gave me what I got, but it's an option to appeal it. But I mean, it's not, you got to get a lawyer, you got to pay money. It's not something that's simple. So it's just,
but also in 5-10 years, the junior officers that you had under your charge while you were in that are now going to be in those positions when you go for the appeal.
Yeah. It's like one of those things, like, do you try to hold them accountable still through the military, or do you just try to go forward? And I still plan on holding them accountable, but really probably more through the political realm. But I mean, I could sue them for libel for releasing my medical records. Like, that's not even talking about my discharge. That's a separate lawsuit that I could go after.
Absolutely.
But it's just, I don't care about the money, but the reason I may do it is just so that they have to think twice about doing that again to someone else. Right.
Well, it's accountability, right? You're going to force it.
Exactly.
Right? Because at the end of the day, you could have plead, and like you said, the judge said, hey, like, you probably win if you plead not guilty. You probably win, but you're like, okay, cool. But did I do all of these things that were listed out, right? Like, am I guilty? Yeah, absolutely. I did those things, right? I'm going to take accountability because I'm talking about accountability. So how can I kind of keep my message the way that it is and not water it down? Right? Was that was your thinking?
That was 100% my thinking. I almost went to general, and the question I asked myself was, what's most important? And it was the message of accountability. And therefore, exactly what you just said. I was like, if I plead not guilty and get off, I mean, there's just no way to defend all the attacks of, oh, he's asking for accountability, but he's not taking accountability himself. So I thought, I'm going to plead guilty.
Yeah. Cool. So where are you now, sir? What's next?
Well, so this last 6 weeks has just been media. I built a coalition of congressional candidates for the 22 cycle. You can find them on votesforvets.org. We've got 30 congressional candidates across the United States and 6 Senate candidates. And so once this media for my story winds down here at the latest end of this month, I've got on my calendar, I'm going to go out and campaign with all my Senate candidates and then probably help a key few of my congressional candidates that I think can win races. And then I'm also writing a book. So on my website, my brand is AuthenticAmericans.com. And so if you go there, you can pre-order a book. And so between doing my media, working on my book, and then influencing the 22 with my coalition. I mean, that'll bring me out till the fall of this year. And at that point, the plan stops and then I reassess. I may run in politics in 24. I haven't made any decisions. I'm just trying to, I've got a plan for 22, and that's really where the plan stops, and we'll see where it takes us after that.
Right. I mean, you gotta kind of take, like you said, take a step back, reassess. Been a lot of shit that's gone on in the last, 5-6 months. So
yeah, I'm in a vacation rental right now. I got to be out by 1 May. Like, I don't even know where I'm going to live. I'm going through a divorce. So to your point, right. There's just things in my personal life that I need to stabilize before I start chasing the next car.
Absolutely. You're in North Carolina?
I'm in North Carolina. Yeah, I'm in North Carolina.
Okay.
Florida's pretty nice.
I was going to say, yeah, Florida's pretty cool. Florida's pretty cool. Definitely. Florida, Texas is pretty cool. Florida's cooler than Texas for sure. What else, Wade? What do we got? You want to do billboard stuff?
I say, yeah, fire up the billboard.
All right. So, sir, every guest that we have on our show, we ask 2 questions towards the end of our show. The first being, if you had a blank billboard for the world to see, what would your message to the world be? What would you put on the blank billboard?
I feel like I have to say accountability right now.
Okay, so we'll
I don't know if I'd have said that 6 months ago, but I feel like after everything we just talked about,
we'll make a special exception. You have 2 billboards, one on each side of the highway.
We'll fund the second one.
We'll pay for it. One says accountability. The other one says.
That's a good question. Give me a second.
One you're seeing from I-95 South, and the other one you're seeing from I-95 North, which no one uses anymore because they're just coming down from New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania,
North Carolina.
California.
That's why I can't buy a fucking house here in Florida right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd have to figure out how to phrase it correctly, but what you guys were talking about earlier, the polarization is a threat that I see facing the United States, and the ability to have compassion and talk to people, engage and educate yourself. So I don't know how I would package that on a billboard, but that would be the message that I would want to convey.
No, I think the first thing that came to my mind was like drawing like a picture with crayons of like what we described earlier with like the left, the right, and then the highway in the middle.
So I have that on my website, AuthenticAmericans.com. That's on my homepage. It's a picture of the United States, and it's got the extremes cut off. And it says, do we want a United States? And so I asked you to check it out. Like, that would probably be the billboard.
I'm gonna check it out for sure. I love that.
Oh, I've sent you guys the links to that.
Yeah, I was looking at it. I was looking at it yesterday. I'm not in like full attention to detail mode, but now I'm going to go back and look through all of these. I was looking for the gear. Like I was looking for the gear. When's the have you started the book, or you're kind of funding it through pre-orders?
So, anyone that's like, I think I'm going to write a book, you got all these ideas. Right. When you actually sit down to write a book, it's hard. So yes, I've been working on it, but it's not flowing as seamlessly as I thought it would.
We've made it to
I had my girlfriend's sister.
Page 1
is a journalist. So I was like, some of the 1-8 guys are writing a book about their experience before Iraq and after. And I was like, I don't know how to do this.
Dude,
so
I had to write a 2-page paper on honor and integrity like last week because some fucking stupid fuck in my fire academy class decided that he wanted to send the fucking test bank to the entire class, including the school administration. And
oh my God.
Yeah. So the fucking fire chief comes in and he's like, listen up. And he did the company commander kind of like guilt talk. And he's like,
disappointed dad.
Yeah, exactly. Like disappointed dad.
Disappointed guys.
Disappointed dad. And he comes in, and we're all sitting down, and me and my buddy Mike were the only vets in the class, and we're the 2 oldest people in the class. Everybody else is 19, 20 years old. I have no idea what the fuck they're doing. And he's like, in my pocket, I have a challenge coin. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna fucking throw up right now. I have a challenge coin. It says duty, honor, respect, courage, and integrity. Do you guys know which of these you violated? I'm like, oh, he's like, but I want. Long story short, he assigned us a 2-page paper instead of kicking the entire class out of school, which would have been kind of funny. A 2-page paper, honor, integrity. I'm like, man, I should probably know about these things, right? It took me way more time than I wanted to. I was stuck the first sentence. In my view, honor and integrity, ... for quite some time. So writing a book is not in the cards for me at any time in the near future.
In my view, honor, courage, commitment.
I used it, dude. I used the Marine Corps fucking website. I used the Marine Corps web because I'm like, well, I can't not.
Right.
I didn't plagiarize.
Who's in it now?
It's a good paper. Like, I did a good job.
Sir, is your book about your experience, or is it about accountability, or is it about
it's
leadership, or is it about your story?
Autobiography.
It is my philosophy on how the military senior leaders and politicians have lost their way, but my indictment on that is through my career and personal story. So I think people relate more to a story rather than just like a master's thesis. So I've written a master's thesis on this, so I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm weaving it through personal experience and story.
Through your lens.
That's right.
As they would say in the biz.
Yeah.
In the writing biz.
Look at
Good
you.
stuff.
Right. I went to school. I went to a good school too. I just left early.
Graduated early? That's impressive.
No. You misunderstood, sir.
If you combined all our credits, we probably have like
We'd have a master's degree.
Yeah, a master's degree.
I'll have my
I'm a
bachelor's
semester
this
away
year.
from a bachelor's.
This year. One of us will.
Well, you will.
Yeah.
Wade played college basketball at community college.
Yeah,
So that counts for something, right?
on a scholarship.
All right. Wade, second question.
Second question is more, we call it the mod, the mission of the day.
Mission of the day.
Something little, like getting up every morning, making your bed, getting up every morning, meditating, just something that you could challenge our listeners to for the next coming week that you do in your personal life, that they can implement into theirs.
Maybe something that would help people stay more accountable to themselves and other people.
I think journaling. So not a lot of people journal because it takes time, but journaling really forces you to be introspective, and then it allows you to go back and reflect on certain things and draw deeper conclusions into your observations of the world.
I think it's a good point. Right, Angelo?
I don't think we've had anyone say that either.
Huh?
I don't think we've had anyone say
No
that.
one. No one said it.
Get all
But
those thoughts out.
Yeah, there you go, sir. Very original. Well, not only when you get your thoughts out, but when you write them down in black and white and you don't like what you're fucking reading, it fucking hurts a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's more, dude. That's what we should get Jarrett to do with the food. I just thought of that.
Yeah.
Jarrett would eat a lot.
I went
better
to
if he was-
McDonald's today.
if he was looking at the food that he was eating on paper and like, man, wow, I'm a piece of shit. Well,
This is how we hold ourselves accountable.
that's the feeling, right? If you're journaling, if you're writing stuff down, you're being honest about it, right? Which is
Right.
That's another hurdle. And you look at the stuff, and that's kind of the brash way of saying is like, wow, look at what these are all the things that I did wrong. If you're being nice to yourself, right? Or look, man, look at what a piece of shit I am today, or I was, right, dude, at night.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah.
Cool, Angelo. Final thoughts.
Final
I was
thoughts.
yelling.
I do have one final thought. I just want your thoughts on the General Milley communicating with China. I just want your thoughts on that, sir.
It's a valid final thought. I'll allow it.
If General Milley actually called the Chinese and said, I'm going to give you a heads up before the president does anything, then he should be put in jail. But I'm not convinced. Like, I don't know what to believe in the media. He came out and made a comment that said that he does call them, but he didn't say that. So, I don't know. I don't know what to believe. I do think Milley loves America, even though he's like portrayed as this like woke general. Like, I think he's smart. I think he loves America, but I do think he has navigated a career and may not necessarily be the best at focusing on giving military advice and winning wars. I think he's gotten so educated that he's lost his way. I mean, I've loved listening to him talking about global warming.
Yeah,
And it's
he's
like,
good at general officer stuff.
that's what I'm saying. Like, hey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs is responsible for giving military advice on how to train, man, and equip. If you, as the chairman of Joint Chiefs, are talking about global warming, I think we've lost our way a little bit. And so I just think he's in the clouds. And so I do think that it's based on some of the things I've seen him say, plausible. I mean, he's doing book interviews. He's talking about global warming, that he would, there's evidence that he was usurping Trump's authority with missile launches, right? So I don't know. The guy seems like he has lost his way a little bit, but I don't know what the truth is on that matter.
Thank you.
Satisfied?
That I am satisfied now.
Wade, final thoughts?
I guess my final thoughts are when I first saw the video, your first video, I didn't really know how to feel about it. I felt like conflicted. I was like, okay, I get it. We all have experiences where like we want to speak out, and it's like it's taking the social media what we really want our Marine Corps leaders doing, and what does that mean for the future? Like, are you going to have Lance Corporals posting videos every time that they, on a lesser note, like have an issue with someone in their chain of command? But as I got to like sit, and I never judge right away, right? Like I'd like watch, and then I read all the content, I read the feedback, and I sat and like just really thought about it. And I think it's like it's pivotal and it's instrumental for others to have the courage to step up and speak out against I don't want to say injustices, but like things that are not right, not only in the military once again, but in they're a corporation. It could be a small little gym like we have where just a couple of us working there. But I think the courage you had to do that is definitely impacted people. That's why I asked you that question. Like, have you gotten like a lot of people asking you, should they speak out, and has it had an impact? And I applaud your efforts, because like I said earlier, as far along in your career, you have a lot to lose at that point. It's a lot easier to say fuck the establishment on your first enlistment. So I really hope that I hope you realize the significance of what you did and how powerful it is, and it's going to be transformative so many people's lives because of what you did. So thank you.
I appreciate that, Wade. I mean, I think hearing someone that was conflicted about it and then really thinking about it is probably the highest compliment. And I'll tell you, I acknowledge that everyone can't just be shouting out of the mouth whatever they think whenever they want. And obviously I didn't get to the place I was in my career doing that. And I still have a lot of really intelligent friends that are senior ranking officers that will go deep. And I'm thinking of one in particular where we were texting back and forth, and he feels exactly the same way I did, but he wrote an article in a professional publication that talked about how failed our strategy was. And we were going back and forth, and he sent it to me. And he's like, you were my inspiration to this. And I was like, but all these professional articles, I was like, nothing fucking happens. Like, we just keep talking about the same problems, but nothing happens. And he came back at me and was like, I need order in the system. We need order in the system. And I thought that was very insightful. Kind of everything we're talking about, like you have to have healthy dialogue and see other people's perspectives. But what I'll say in defense of myself is this was exceptional times, right? This wasn't, hey, you used a dirty mop, right? This was the culmination of 2 decades of bad mistakes that epitomized, I think, in crystal clear view, how the general officer population has lost its way. And to me, it was very hard. It wasn't something that I took lightly, but it just seemed like, you guys talked about it earlier, how many people were in a position of authority that had all the experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan, that had the education that could speak to that moment. And so that's why I did what I did.
Love it.
Cool.
Phil, final thoughts.
You know, I don't want to piggyback too much off of what Wade said, but I had similar, like, I love the first video. I was like, fuck yeah, like this is cool. You know, texted some friends, hey, who knows, anybody know the sir? No, only heard good things. Cool, I'm all for it. Second video, I'm like, oh no, I hope he didn't lose his mind a little bit. Right? Like, I was like, somebody really got him rattled up.
Well, that was also the same time frame that the media started saying that.
Yeah,
exactly.
His mind.
Like, oh no,
I actually liked it.
The second video is obviously the one that if I could go back and tweak some of the verbiage, I would. But which it was hard to understand just watching that video, the gravity of that situation
and where you were at, right? Like your wife's chirping at you now, like you know your family's at risk.
Yep.
You're fired, right?
Yep.
Like there's a lot of stuff going on between.
There was a lot of stuff going on, man, and so
which we don't know over here until later, right? I mean, I guess we could probably think about it, but we're not that smart, you know. Face value, right? And you know, something we all learned in the Marine Corps, right? Perception's reality. So it's like, oh shit, like maybe let's take a step back, dig deeper, figure out what's really going on. Why don't we have a conversation? Can we make that happen, Angelo? Yeah. Okay, cool. And now here we are, you know, having an opportunity to talk about it. So I appreciate you taking time out of your, I'm sure, busy schedule. You've been out of the Marine Corps for a total of like 6 weeks, right? You've been able to speak freely for 6 weeks. And you've taken, you know, an hour and a half of your time to spend with us. So that's very much appreciated.
Thank you, sir.
Love to have you in South Florida one weekend.
Yeah. Anytime that you want to come down, hang out, work out, hang out with some other Marines and veterans and do cool shit with us. We always have room for you.
I like to do cool shit.
I like to do cool shit.
Well, in April, there's a Irreverent Warriors hike. I don't know if you're
familiar with the Irreverent Warriors.
Yeah. So we're part of the Fort Lauderdale
Donnie
team.
O'Malley is a former dark side as well.
So I'll be up there in April. So I'll make sure I shoot you a message there.
Yeah, ping me.
In North Carolina.
Yeah, there's Wilmington. I think it's
Wilmington.
That's gonna be a
Wilmington's the first
shit
one.
show.
Or it might be Jacksonville as the first one. I'm not sure.
Even
I'll check.
worse. What in the fucking world?
Jacksonville, man. That's the city right there.
That's the
Jacksonville. That's what it is.
Jacksonville.
For the record,
I'm so
Dirtwood
happy.
is gone. It's platinum. It's still garbage.
But what about Toby's?
Toby's is still there, standing.
Toby's is still there.
I am so glad. I was one of, I think, like 24 Marines that graduated SOI. We all had orders to 1-6. We were going to 1-6, and they were like, yoo-hoo, you're not going to 1-6 anymore. You're going to 5th Marines. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but Camp Pendleton sounds nice.
Yeah.
You know, I really lucked out there. San Mateo. We didn't have any big officers anywhere near us, which was fantastic. You lived in Horno when you were out there, so
Yeah, Horno was still just as terrible.
all right. Let's let the sir go. He's busy. He's a busy.
All right,
guy.
guys.
All right, sir. Appreciate you. Thanks
Ross,
for coming
sir,
on.
thank you.
Until next time.
Later.
We're out.
Semper Fi.
Let me